Hi everyone, calling to order the Board of Commissioners in our scheduled weekly work session. It's July 27th, 2022. The time now is 10 o'clock. Here with us this morning is Vice Chair Commissioner Derek DeGroot, myself as Chair, Commissioner Kelly Minty, and Commissioner Dave Hensley. Before we get into the agenda, our meeting minutes from the last time we were together considered approved by the board.
Yeah, they look good.
All right, excellent. We'll move on to item 4, Oregon Living with Fire update. So we have a couple folks here with us. As a reminder, please identify yourself for the record the first time you speak.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Jody Barham. I'm a co-coordinator for Oregon Living with Fire, and I'm based out of Bend, Oregon.
And I'm Jennifer Fenton. I'm here in Klamath Falls and also a co-coordinator for Living with Fire.
And we have our steering committee member, Brandon Fowler, here with us as well. I know these were probably emailed to you, but I will hand you our program of work from the past year, as well as our latest list of our steering committee members, so that you can see who's involved. Today, we just wanted to provide you with a brief update. We accomplished quite a bit over the last year, and wanted to make sure that you knew where the dollars that each of the counties that invest in this program go. We spend a lot of time working with forest collaboratives, so the Klamath Lake Forest Health Partnership, and you'll see a lot of acronyms in the outcomes and notes. We work with them as well as the Deschutes Collaborative Forest Project and the Ochiko Forest Restoration Collaborative. Those are the 3 main collaboratives that we work with, implementing the national cohesive strategy here on our landscape. Part of that focus has to do with assisting on grant writing, which is primarily what Jen has been up to this year. So as you'll see when we come out with our new program of work, we're going to pull grants into their own subsection because Jen is very busy with that. In fact, do you want to update on where some of the grants are at that we've been working on?
Well, I've done about 4 for ODF out of Prineville, and all of them, to my knowledge, have been approved for funding. They wanted to do a lot of mitigation work and try to beef up a lot of their stuff in that area as far as making sure that they had effective response and or emergency situations handled over there. And the other one I did is for Walker Range, the Rural Business Development Grant. They wanted to get some new generators. I haven't heard on that one yet. Those ones are supposed to announce in August sometime. Hoping it's in the next week, but it's probably going to be toward the end of the month. But there's a lot of ones that are coming up. There's one that's supposed to release today to help with developing community, what is the word, Joe? Wildfire protection programs. They're releasing $1 billion for that. So when that releases officially, I want to really get on that and figure out if there's something that we can do here or within our landscape in general to figure that one out. And then of course, BRIC, Building Resilient Infrastructure Community, that one's releasing in September. I have sent out a couple of different emails for different the FEMA Go platform that they want you to use. It's a whole webinar series of it takes about an hour to go through, and yeah, so if we can start thinking about different projects we want to put together, Klamath County can apply as the primary applicant, and then you can have as many sub-applicants under Klamath County as you want, but Klamath County can only apply once, so they can't be a sub-applicant on something else.
Right, and we do have another proposal that we're putting in where Deschutes County will be the main applicant. We'll have sub-applicants out of Crook County and maybe Jefferson County. There's a variety of projects that we pull under that umbrella. So if Klamath County was on their own or as part of that other package, that's what we'll be looking towards in September, which is the best avenue to go with that. Other things we've been working on, building relationships across our county lines, because we just cover the northern part of Klamath County for our landscape and implementing the cohesive strategy. So Walker Range is the closest partner to Deschutes County on that. And we've been going through different proposals, working now that we're finally out of the pandemic, starting to re-engage with partners on the ground. We held a successful pre-season meeting at the Deschutes County Fairgrounds earlier this year in June, and we'll keep doing that annually. Next year we expect to get back to fully in person. It was half in person, half virtual for this season, and we're all, with this hot weather, getting ready to go out on fires. I know my fire team is actually #1 in the rotation now, so I could get dispatched any day and be out for 2 to 3 weeks living in a tent somewhere,
Let's
so.
hope it doesn't happen.
I know,
It's
that's
gonna happen,
what
but
I
let's hope
keep
it's-
thinking, yeah, with all the little starts, we've been really successful at initial attack this year. So, and kudos to our partners at the state, federal levels, and the local departments for getting on some of those just accidental starts in our communities. So we are really watching that. We're watching the temperatures, we're watching particularly this area of Oregon. You are unfortunately blessed to stay in high drought for a little while longer. So those conditions combined with the high temperatures, we're going to be watching the wildfire response down here. We've covered some of our other work with the Forest Service, Department of Forestry, and having the Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office now on our steering committee has really given us an inside track to what will be coming out of some of the subcommittees for Senate Bill 762. So we'll be keeping you apprised of any opportunities there for partnerships, for work to be done on the landscape with the Heart of Oregon Corps and with other state fire marshal groups that they're putting together. On the communication side, you can see that we're continuing to grow our outreach, connecting people with some of our national network and networking that we do through the Wildland Urban Interface Conference, through the Fire Adaptive Communities Learning Network, pulling in some of the latest sciences, the best practices. In fact, I've got a special private viewing for a documentary that's going to be coming out, and they're bringing in Dr. Jack Cohen for a question and answer session afterward to keep us moving forward on how do we help harden our homes, create those defensible spaces. What does your community want to see as far as policies from you, as well as getting information through your local departments out to those neighborhoods. So you'll see that coming out this coming year. Other than that, just wanted to continue to grow all that we're doing here, and especially being co-coordinator with Jen. Previously, the coordinator was just out of Central Oregon, and Allison would come down periodically. But having Jen here, recognizing Linnea this past year at the high school, and thank you to Commissioner Mint for coming for that. We were really thrilled with her work, and she's actually been even, that video is being shared even more and promoted even more. We haven't been able to loop her into a video project for us yet, but we're hoping to do that this fall. So stay tuned on that. And if not her, working with the class at Klamath Union. They've been wonderful to work with. So we'll be connecting back with that class on some of our events that we may be having down in this area to have their assistance with some of that. And then finally, I do have something for you to think on with our steering committee members. We do have one vacant spot, and that's for a stakeholder in Klamath County. So it's supposed to be non-governmental, but if we could find somebody, or if you want to work with Brandon and think of somebody maybe particularly from the northern Klamath County region, a large landowner or a possible agency partner, it'd be nice to have more representation on our steering committee from this county. So if we could, between now and the end of the year, maybe identify someone to nominate for that, we would really appreciate that. Other than that, Brandon, did you have anything you wanted to
No,
add
not
as
at
a
all.
steering
You guys
committee member?
got it. You guys did great.
Didn't want to take too much of your time. If you have any questions,
Questions from the board?
I'll definitely give some thought to that person. For questions. Thank you for your work, and
Yeah.
good luck this year.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Safe travels. All right, next on our agenda is the item with Kurt Thomas. I'm guessing is he joining via Zoom?
So he's not here.
So I'll have him stop here.
I was told there was
Okay, will you check with our staff, Sandy and Randy? While we wait for, that item, Randy, is your item lengthy?
No.
Come on up.
Thank you to the commissioners for allowing me to take the time here. I actually have two things I wanted to run by you guys. One of them is what's called a temporary use permit. So, as you're aware, there's a large builder in our community now that's getting started, actually gonna probably break ground here in the next couple of weeks. So it's pretty typical in construction phases to have what they call a construction shack, which is a mobile office basically on wheels. And any large developments that a builder might take on where there's gonna be 10, 12 or more lots to be built on, they will bring in a construction shack. Well, it turns out that this construction shack is governed under the rules of the temporary use permit. The TUP really is used primarily for things such as someone having an elderly parent that they need to bring into their care, I guess you'd say. So they take a manufactured home, they go get a temporary use permit, spot this manufactured home on the property, put the relative in there, the relative eventually goes to heaven, and now the home has to come off. So there's a lot of criteria and that's involved with this permit. And the fee, I think, is $1,500. This is right out of the county's website. That shows you basically what the requirements are for a TUP. Many of those requirements don't fit the description of a construction shack. In fact, this construction shack remains on wheels. They just put jacks on the four corners, pull it up off the ground a little bit, put a staircase in there, and start working out of there. So my thought is, and I might be a little premature talking to you guys about it, but I thought it would be good to bring it to light because I want to meet with Eric at the planning department because they're the ones that issued that permit.
Mm-hmm.
So this particular permit can take up to 7 weeks to be issued after the application is submitted. If you're wanting to build houses, 7 weeks is a long time to wait to get started just to get a temporary use permit. So, it's my preliminary thoughts that maybe this is something that should be done from the building department, and maybe it should be an administrative review that doesn't involve all of the departments and the general public in reviewing this permit and making comment on it. I'm just throwing stuff out here right now. I think it's something we need to take a look at. And I don't think, D.R. Johnson didn't say, well, $1,500 is ridiculous or anything like that. I think the cost of the permit's not the issue here. It's the cost of time that it takes for these people. They're ready to hit the ground. There's no sewer hookup. There is an electrical. Okay, the sewer hookup is, they have to have porta potties there on site. So anyway, I'm just wanted to bring it to your attention at this point because we had to wait 4 weeks before we could get things started out there and start moving dirt, just because this is temporary use permit process and what you have to go through in order to get there. And like I said, I highlighted a few things on that list that don't really apply to a construction shack. So it's my thought that we need to take a second look at that.
Okay.
And I want to bring that up to you guys, and then I'll meet with Eric and I'll do what I need to do on my end to get a little more information. But I'd like that to be considered. Because I think there's other builders that are getting ready to do some things here on falls.
You could work with Eric and get a recommendation.
Okay.
We could do it here, or I think that's what the planning commission might be able to just take that up and take care of it too. I don't even know if they need us, so.
Yeah, maybe not. I'm not sure either. I just wanted to bring it to your attention because it really, they were just getting really antsy about it, and of course, they're calling my office every day, hey, you know, is that permit issue, is it permit issue, is it permit issue?
And when Wendy brought it to my attention, I called down and it was done.
Yeah, and yeah, it was done that day, and that was 4 weeks later.
Yeah, should have called me earlier.
So
So,
are there questions of Randy from the board or comments?
I don't have any questions, just thank you for
I
bringing
think
that
I'm
up.
good
All right,
Alright.
on
perfect.
the
Thanks,
other one
Randy.
too, so
Yep.
thanks for your time, you
Our
guys.
goal was
Good to see
to
you,
make
Randy.
it
You bet. We'll
nice
see you
and
later.
friendly and easy.
Great.
Alright,
Kurt
so,
was going to be here, he is not.
okay, so I apologize to guests who came for that, but I'm going to just eliminate that item.
Unless there's something you want.
Unless, yeah, I mean, if you have a point you wanna make, I'm willing to listen to you.
I mean, you've seen my letter, you've seen his.
I've seen the letters, I've read the letters, and excuse me, Gene Souza, Klamath Irrigation District Executive Director. I'm here on behalf of Klamath Water Users as their Operations Committee Chair. You've read Klamath Water Users' letter. You've heard me speak about the importance of our refuges. It's important to all of us. It's important to our economy. It's important to our environment. It's important to our way of life. We decided to live here because of certain things in our area, and the refuges are a key part of that. The Thomas Transfer is a great thing to get water from a place where it's not necessarily needed, because that land is surrounded by water. If you've ever been there, it's beautiful. If you've taken a stroll through that area, it's an awesome place for a little family ranch. It's got water on both sides of it, and the amount of water that's needed to sustain that, he has enough to move it somewhere else. The ability to get water from Upper Klamath Lake or from his property to the refuges, we have the infrastructure to do that. Our problem, from a water user's perspective, and as my position as Klamath Irrigation District Executive Director, is that the equal apportionment of law is not being observed across our communities. The Thomas transfer is a legal transfer. It went through Oregon State. It was approved, and it should be applied correctly. But as we look at the Klamath project, and we look at the laws that are and the water rights of the Klamath project, and how that water right is to be administered, it's not fair and equitable. If it was fair and equitable, if Oregon State law was being followed as per the Reclamation Act, we'd have a lot of water in the refuge today. It wouldn't be a dry mess. We'd have birds and we'd have wildlife down there if the law was being followed. But because federal government is picking and choosing which laws and when it allows to happen, it's not good for our community. It's not good for our environment. And I'd ask the commissioners, in your engagements with the state, in your engagements with federal agencies, to include Fish and Wildlife Service, to include Reclamation, to keep in mind that we'd like to have fair and equitable treatment across the law. This Thomas transfer is a great thing for our community, but as other water users in the process, we'd love to have that same equitable given to us, is what I'm asking.
Appreciate that.
Questions?
Oh, no, it's not just a question, but maybe a comment. So the letter that the Tri-Counties, which I was a signatory, you read that. I mean, the gist of the letter is we're done with random acts of conservation, that any of the dollars that are being used that came from that $162 million need to be focused on a grander plan to resolve water conflict in the basin, and these little pick and choose what types of conservation you like and what conservation you don't like is no longer acceptable. And as you just pointed out, just cherry picking winners and losers throughout the basin, that doesn't work. We also mentioned purchasing and retiring farmland in its entirety. That also doesn't work. You know, now if it was small and it was part of a grand plan, I mean, let's talk, because I'm all in on any type of grand plan that gets us to some type of a water settlement or resolving and eliminating the conflict. But if we're just going to have the shotgun effect that we've been working on, that seems to be the last decade. I'm just not in anymore. You know, at one point in time we had a plan and no money. Now there's money, no plan, and they want to spend it as fast as they can. And I just won't have it. So anyway,
And
Can I
think-
rank?
hold on a minute.
Go ahead.
Commissioner, any comment?
Oh, but,
Go ahead. So I'm Rankley Brown, Vice President of Plymouth Water Use Association, President of Plymouth Basin Improvement District. And to kind of add on to what Gene said, one of our biggest concerns, especially representing a Warren Act district, is that when you have a transfer and go to land that is the same water right as we are, but kind of getting that preferential treatment, essentially it does injure our capacities of water rights as a district. And like Gene said, if we had equitable, consistent apportionment of law and enforcement of law from the states, we wouldn't be in this situation. So that's the thing when you guys take it further forward, especially in the Tri-Counties conversations, to make sure that is kind of the message of going, state, you need to enforce your laws in its totality, no matter how uncomfortable it is. It's your obligation, not your privilege.
I think that's a great point. I think it's an excellent point. I've got 2 Warren Act contracts, so I understand your points exactly. You know, I'm just gonna add one thing. I think protection of farmland is important to me. I don't think it is. And I've said that time and time again, that I'm gonna do anything I can to protect farmland and protect our agricultural communities. So I appreciate you guys' comments today. I appreciate you coming in and telling us what you think. That means a lot to me.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, guys.
Thanks for being here.
yeah, thanks for being here.
Let's stick for a second.
Sure. Public Works, come on up.
Yeah. This is cool.
Thank you.
That's like a perfect system. Oh, you know what? I could be the one that's written all over it too.
Okay, I don't want that.
You don't want that one.
Thank you, ma'am.
Speak up.
Good morning, Jeremy Morris, Public Works Director. Just quick introductions.
I'm Erin Cox. I am the Northwest Water Market Sector Lead for Brown and Caldwell, and I'm an environmental engineer.
Michael Zarzynski, Klamath County Engineer.
And thanks to the board for adding this agenda to the work session. I think individually we've talked about the idea. It's kind of surrounded around a decade of proposed, say, broadband approach with little, say, master plan level that allows the board to figure out where to best support potential solutions. And so I think, from a board perspective, you all hear this quite a bit, and it comes down to tourism, the environment, the former agenda item with the refuge and the water transfer, dry wells, the economy. This is a very large issue for the Klamath Basin. And we reached out to Brown and Caldwell. They're a consultant that has dealt with this elsewhere in the United States, in the Midwest, and in California. Thought it was a good idea to potentially almost prepare a master plan of, there have been a lot of ideas and a lot of research by a lot of agencies over the years, the last 20 years, is maybe dive into those a little bit, dust them off, update them to 2022 cost, see if there's funding mechanisms, not only from the state or the federal level, but also when it comes down to implementing small pilot projects, is there local solutions and local improvement district kind of a philosophy to start getting some of these ideas vetted and potentially implemented to develop a management toolbox. And I've seen this approach tried for decades of solving the problem by throwing a lot of money at it. And here we are still, you know, a couple of the worst years on record. And not just worst years from a allocation to the project, but some of the worst years for the environment and ecosystem also. And if we have a management toolbox, we can identify those potential funding sources, get them implemented, and start working on a few pilot projects. We're definitely not here to solve the entire crisis. I think that that's a bit much for, say, at the county level, but identify options that can be implemented locally. And the board obviously gets asked and pulled in a lot of directions when a new project comes down and you're asked to support that project, whether it's directly with funding or indirectly with letters of support, things like that. Well, this type of a toolbox could assist the board in making those decisions. What we see is a siloed approach of 3 or 4 different groups of stakeholders going in 3 or 4 different directions. There isn't really a master plan that gets all 3 or 4 groups in the same room and starts discussing the pluses and minuses of those, vetting them, and agreeing on what the best approach is and the biggest bang for a buck. I'm gonna talk about a couple of, well, and also in a siloed approach, you get a lot of overlap. You might have 2 or 3 of those agencies pursuing funding and attempting to perform 2 or 3 very similar projects. You also get a real broad brush approach where how do you know the project is the highest priority when it comes down to, say, inside of this $162 million that's given for restoration. How many know exactly what that's going towards and what the outcome is? It hasn't been shared with folks in this room, so. So what we brought in, Aaron will speak to this in a few minutes, but just developing a toolbox, and one of the tools in that toolbox might be a stakeholder group that has this master plan, helps vet new projects that are coming in. There are a few very specific projects that haven't been studied or at a feasibility level, and one of them is aquifer storage and recovery. Surface water has been an issue for decades, and now we're seeing this shift to support, say, the economy and the shift of known groundwater rights and supplemental groundwater rights that isn't sustainable. When you're, and there was a study by the Bureau, I think, a while back that said 50,000 acre feet is sustainable, and I think we're well north of that right now. And so something that captures in the off season and potentially stores and recovers, and maybe a different way to think of that is just the evaporative loss that we're facing both on Upper Klamath Lake, Gerber, Clear Lake, probably well north of 100,000 acre feet a year in those 3 facilities. Well, if we can capture and store that as opposed to it evaporating, now you're possibly putting 50 to 100,000 underground and using 50,000, and we're making a net increase in the long run, which would make this transition a little more sustainable in the long run for transitioning from surface to groundwater. We oversee the Drainage Service District. That's a little urban district that collects the runoff and groundwater from the unincorporated portion of the urban growth boundary. And I spoke to EID and I said, in a regular year, how many acre feet of water is delivered to the urban environment? And they said about 6,000 acre feet. I haven't received a number from KID yet, but proportionally it's about double the land. You know, EID's north of the A Canal, KID south of the A Canal. So if we enter into a potential aquifer storage and recovery for that, an infiltration basin to a shallow aquifer, even pumping it from the discharge point 50 feet in elevation back to EID's upper delivery system, you could recirculate and save potentially 10,000 acre feet just by something like that. That's never been studied before, and I think it's a good time where we have the Drainage Service District Master Plan, which is a separate effort just for that little area. But those types of ideas, I think, give additional toolboxes in the long run to for managing. You keep 10,000 acre feet from needing to come out of the lake. Well, then that's a benefit to the, say, the surface water. We take 10,000 acre feet, put it underground, and shallow, medium, and deep aquifers. That's a groundwater right that could be relied on in the future to offset water staying in the lake. Those types of ideas is kind of what we're discussing in a big picture here. So with that, turn it over to Erin and.
Well, yeah, so this morning I feel like the conversation that we were just having was a perfect segue. You guys know how much I care about Klamath County. The first time I was actually in Klamath County was in the year 2001, when my ex-husband was in the first group of F-15 students at Kingsley Field, and there was a water war at that time. And I remember the bucket brigade and studying that way back then, you know, and here we are 20 some years later. And what I would love to be able to bring to the table is that overarching look at everything that's been done to date and create a framework with which Klamath County could look at all the projects going on and look at them in a more holistic way. Because you know, what's been going on has been piecemeal. Like they said, it's not always being evaluated from a technical perspective as the synergies that could occur between them. And I just feel like there's a tremendous opportunity here. You guys know through my work at Oregon Tech as a professor that I know the water resources of this area very well. I actually got to work with Rye and Jean when I was working as a principal investigator of the Water and Drought Resilience and Sustainability Program at Oregon Tech. I think there are a lot of opportunities that are not currently being evaluated or even brought to the table. So like a lot of other entities, right now, one of the biggest things that is happening is the changing in the timing of the water. These guys are experiencing it. You know, the way the snowpack in the mountains used to melt and provide water at the right time was pretty optimal for a long time. We were fortunate to have that most years. But throughout the West, the timing of the water is changing. And we need to be able to capture that water and effectively make sure that we're putting it somewhere where it can be sustained and provided as a resilient water resource when it's needed. And I think that this could provide, we know that as water, you know, when you do aquifer storage and recovery, there's opportunity for water quality improvement. You know, if you look at how we treat water, it goes through sand and gravel. So there's ways that you can replenish the aquifer for future use. And I love the idea of not just one massive solution, but a number of small implementable solutions and a prioritized list of projects. So what I think the first thing we need to do is look at all this, the research and the study that's been done to date. The academic in me would be really excited about the opportunity to just get my head wrapped around everything that's been done. Because as you guys know, a lot of money has been thrown into research by a lot of governmental agencies, and there's a lot of good research. You look at the Bureau of Reclamation, they did a project about storage options, but none of them have ever come to fruition. The study is great, but there are more alternatives that haven't been vetted. So what I would bring to the table in this capacity is an independent technical engineering analysis, where we could look at different options, evaluate them, create a framework with which you could have the information, the data, to make better decisions, to help sustain the way of life here in Klamath County. And do it in a way that, you know, is going to create resilience for the future. Because I know that the agricultural community here wants the opportunity for their children to be able to have the same lifestyle. And it's getting a little worrisome, you know, the last few years, I know 2021, 2022, the allocations are, you know, very, very low. And I think that what we could do is first, like I said, look at everything that's been done, evaluate it, and then come up with a list of other options that have not been done or have not been proposed to date, give them a very scientific evaluation, prioritize them, but also look at them and how they would be synergistic with other opportunities and projects. And then when other people come or other entities come and they want to propose new projects, how would they fit into this framework or this technical master plan of other options that have been evaluated? Because as we are seeing, you know, independent siloed projects are creating little benefits. They're not always there's not equality always applied to these. They're not always being distributed evenly. So I think it's really exciting. The other thing that needs to be done from my perspective is a water balance. We need to look like, where is the water? What is the timing of the water? A lot of allocations have been made on historical water, like the hydrology of the past. We need to be looking at it, the hydrology of the present, and we need to be looking at where water is, where it's stored. We need to better evaluate the groundwater and understand the whole system from a hydrologic perspective. Because that's how we're going to evaluate projects, where they're needed the most, where they would cause the most benefit. The benefit analysis, that triple bottom line, people, planet, profit, or not profit, but the economics part of that. We can make sure that we create that framework with which to do that. The water balance, I think, is a really key part of it. And then when we come up with a comprehensive list of alternatives based on both those that have already been evaluated a little bit or described, but also those that are new that we think could be really beneficial. And then we could create a process to evaluate them based on criteria that everybody gets to participate in developing. Not everybody, but the key stakeholders get to participate in developing to make sure that the projects that are funded and facilitated are going to be effective. They're going to provide additional water supply. They're going to mitigate that timing issue that all farmers are experiencing, and try to create something that could be a win, something that could bring people together and have some benefit that is tangible. A pilot project, something that we could proof of concept, like this is something that could actually work, and then we could expand upon. There's going to be that list of projects, small projects that are more easy to implement. Aquifer storage and recovery can be completed at a lot of different scales. My colleague, Kirk Westfall, he has been a part of facilitating this type of basin-wide evaluation in a number of other drought-stricken and water-scarce basins throughout the country. He's probably one of the world's preeminent experts in this area. And I have the intimate knowledge of Klamath County, the way the different irrigation districts work and how water is allocated. And I really feel like this could be a tremendous benefit to the people of Klamath County and for the economic vitality of the future. As we know, water is life. They know water is life. Water is for the environment, for our primary economic driver of agriculture. And without making sure that we've got a more resilient water future, a lot of other things don't really matter. So I'm excited to talk more about this with you, but I feel like there's a lot of opportunity.
Questions from the board for our guests or for Public Works?
I definitely want to learn more. I'm intrigued. Part of what I'm hearing is a water storage master plan, so to speak, right? That's kind of what's being triggered in my head.
Yeah.
And nothing like it that I'm aware of. And studying all different kinds of storage is a great idea. So I definitely want to, I want to know more. I'm very, very intrigued.
I've been intrigued as well and fascinated with this idea of how do we collect, retain, and use wastewater, stormwater. There's a lot of God-given water that I think we're missing the boat on, and how do we give that back to the farmers through KID and KDD, and so these conversations have kind of popped up over the last couple of years, but no one's really taken them on to explore it and see how to actually make it a reality. I know, I mean, even as much as people using, what am I trying to say, their wells to heat, right? Help me out.
Geothermal.
Geothermal, thank you. I know that there's geothermal that's being used, and not everybody, and even the city, isn't re-injecting that water. So how do we make sure that's getting done? Because we've got waste with geothermal systems. There's just a lot of water, I believe, that's out there that we're not exploring how to capture, re-inject into the aquifer, store it, use it later to help our community and to help the farmers. I just look at, we've got to have a different plan. We've been doing the same thing over and over, and it's just, it doesn't make any sense to me that, I mean, isn't that the definition of insanity? You just keep doing the same thing over and over and you're not getting anywhere, but yet here we are. So I love this concept. I love the idea. I think there's much more to it as well. I think Erin has just flirted with some concepts here, but there's much more to it, I think, that she could tackle and we could look into. And I love it. I'm on board. Let's do something different. Even if we fail, we're already failing. It's not going to be worse. So let's try something new. Let's be creative. But we're killing ourselves right now. Got to do something different.
Okay, so for, hold on. So for my, because I'd like to get through everyone and then, and I did that to you too, and I'm sorry. It's just the way I have to run the meeting, so everyone gets the chance to speak from the board. A couple of thoughts. One is I can get on board with the approach of some technical expertise, but some things I want kept in the forefront of our minds. One is there was a lot of talk about a management toolbox, and everybody needs to remember that we're not necessarily the water managers. So while bringing some of those ideas to light, or getting them on paper, so to speak, great, but the county is not the water managers, and that needs to be constantly a reminder. Additionally, I think that if this is approached from the angle of both the county manages the drainage district, which is our responsibility, and also the county has been trying to help homeowners with dry wells. I mean, that is sort of a new phenomenon that the county has been helping on. I think those are two angles that give the county a nexus, but some of my concerns / fears are the county, and Jeremy has heard me say this before, the county manages hundreds of miles of roads, more than 100 bridges, multiple sheriff's deputies, proper elections, emergency management. The county does a lot, and the county already has a lot of responsibility, and the county sort of taking on the responsibility of water solutions when we don't have authority, that most of these things are managed by federal and state government, or mismanaged by federal and state government, more accurately. That's just the reality. So while I can be supportive of some technical expertise related to potential future water storage, particularly as the nexus for both drinking water for citizens and drainage district, but I just want to make sure we sort of stay in that lane. One thing that would be very important to me is that we don't start getting into political or partisan discussions at all. No. If it stays in the technical realm, again, I would be perhaps interested in hearing more. So, okay, I'll pause there. So all board members got to speak. Go ahead.
I was just going to go back to what you were talking about earlier when you described the water resources and being more effective managing wastewater, drinking water, stormwater, all the different like irrigation water. That's like one water approach, which is becoming really essential for the West. It's becoming essential for everywhere, but it's, a lot of times there's a permitting nexus for a wastewater facility that pushes a utility into doing one water planning, but here we've got maybe different drivers. But Commissioner Minty, I agree, this would be non-political, technical, that would definitely be the intention from my perspective.
Yeah, appreciate what you said, both of you. One thing that I make sure I say, having more information and be in a position where we can lead conversations, advocate when necessary, and push back, especially on state and federal government at times, and having the tools to do that properly, instead of, kind of what I was saying when Brian and Jean were up, is I'm throwing my hands in the air and I'm just saying, until you guys have a plan, I'm not supporting anything anymore, right? Because I'm just getting fed up with random acts that have no benefit and nobody's seeing any benefit, and just the same year over year over year. So having some type of centralized toolbox for us to be able to advocate for our community, push back when necessary, help lead some conversations that try to work towards some type of resolution, especially around water conflict, I'm really intrigued, and I'd really like to get involved in something like that.
Yeah, I think I'll probably just leave it at this. Commissioner Minty's comments were excellent. I appreciate what she said, and Commissioner DeGroot. And I think that commissioners should stay in their lane. I think that that's true, but you know what? It's time to shift lanes. It's time for us to get in the passing lane. And I think that having some ideas that we can drive forward as commissioners is great, but I'm ready to be more vocal about the protection of Klamath County. And so again, stay in our lane, great, I love it, but let's pick a different lane.
So what I'm hearing is, what we'll do is work with Brown Caldwell and Aaron and bring back a scope and an estimated fee and discuss that at say a future work session. Possible target would be ARP funds. The Drainage Service District might be able to participate a little bit on some of the reuse and recycling options there. So might be a way to split a little bit of the cost.
Good.
Is that?
Yeah,
accurate?
that sounds
Sounds
like a
perfect.
reasonable
Okay.
next step. Anyone else have, from the board, have comments, questions, or clarification needed? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our agenda, save for, we do have a spot, other county business, anything the board needs addressed before I adjourn us.
I got nothing.
All right, so we're adjourned at 10:48.